of short. Good afternoon. Good to be here again. I love it. I love educating, and I love that you're together. It makes it stronger. It makes it more powerful. I am Chris Erickson. I am an RN for about 32 years. I worked in neuro and trauma with a lot of neurologists and neurosurgeons. I'm also the executive director at Valley Assistance Services. We do, the easiest way to describe us is community health and social services and blending them together. So one side, we look and educate on health. We have RNs that visit. On the other side, we do financial things. So I'm talking a little bit about financial stuff today. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't want to advise. What I want to do is just give you information so you know what's in this state a little bit. We do a lot of rental assistance, utility assistance, but we see a lot of people who are on fixed incomes who might be having medical issues or outliving their income and doing stuff like that. So I might have to supply you with more stuff. I brought some information. One thing when I look at financial, we'll be looking at, and I know you might have touched on this, is advance directives. That is my big promotion on that because I have seen too many things go south on that. So the financial directives or advance directives, and one piece of that is finance. And then there's also another one with kind of an orange top on it. It's called Arizona Self-Help. And Arizona Self-Help is for Arizona. It's a little bit of a demographic thing. It will ask you kind of where you live, the zip code, a little bit of maybe the monthly income, and it will populate what the benefits you might be qualified for. That's always helpful with fixed incomes or incomes that might be using things up quickly. So, and we also do that in our office as well. So there's a lot of folks we see that don't have computers and use their phones, and sometimes that's very difficult on a small phone versus a computer. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. The other piece of information, and I might need to maybe bring some more back, is what they call alt-text. So in the state of Arizona is Access, which is Medicaid in other states. We have alt-text here for those who are in the senior population. So that is kind of a Medicaid plus. That's probably the easiest way to describe that. And so I did bring a sheet related to that because it does help. If there is, if you're spending down a lot of money, you have a lot of income, it's going to health, and you're getting less and less and less in your reserve, and you have maybe $2,700 or less a month coming in, which a lot of people do in our area. That might be something you might be qualified for if that person is both medically disadvantaged and financially disadvantaged. So this is just a helpful thing, just to kind of read through it and glance through it. There are some requirements, and it kind of goes through the guidelines, but it has helped couples pay for adult care homes or nursing homes or skilled homes. And so those add up. Anybody want to take a guess at what an adult care home or assisted living might be per month? About 5,000. Certain ones are about 6,500 per person. That adds up per month. Per month. Skilled, when I talk about skilled, I mean maybe somebody requiring a nurse, more getting dressed, helping eat and all that. It could be up to 10,000 a month. Those things are really, they add up very quickly. And so I just wanted you to have a little bit information on the alt-text program in case you or someone you know might benefit from it, that they could look into that as well. So when I talk about financial, I kind of bring in a lot of stuff. First of all, memory changes things, doesn't it? So we might have someone who might be writing out duplication of checks, or checks to something that shouldn't be written out to. And what I mean by that is scams. I have gone to homes where that person is maybe a little bit memory impaired, still okay living on their own, but caught up in a scam. And that is not good. We've had several in our community have lost 6-figure digits into scams. It doesn't take much. They call, and lucky enough when I was there, this person said, "What do I do?" I said, "We're going to call the scam squad and the sheriff right now." Put the phone down. They put the phone down, and they were there. They came in and they gathered up the information and talked to that person. We have a great resource in an SAV with the scam squad here and in the sheriff department. So if you can remember those two things, if you see someone kind of like, well, you know, I've been reading this email, that's another thing. You know, with memory, sometimes we're not seeing a full sentence. As the memory kind of lapses, well, this is a great deal for you. They might see, this is great, and reply to it. We got to be careful on that. So kind of a vision and memory kind of with these emails and all these scams kind of might be detrimental to that person's financial health. So again, kind of looking out for that person, making sure that you know the resources in the area. That's one of my big things I talk about is the scams when we're talking about financial issues and things. The other thing is what I kind of associate with finances is the advanced care directives. Some people call them living wills, those types of things, but advanced care directives in the state of Arizona, you might have already heard this, I'll touch on it very briefly, is financial power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and mental health power of attorney. 3 different power of attorneys, which is different than any other state. We have the mental health. They have had do it now by themselves. So a great website for information on that is the Secretary of State of Arizona website. They have a very long, lengthy one, but they also they were inserting some videos and describing some stuff, but all the information is there. I also brought 5 wishes. Anybody kind of know about 5 wishes? 5 wishes is a very easy way to start those advanced care directives. 5 wishes is, I've given out probably about 600 of these in the last 10 years to people because they're legal in about 41, 42 states. It was written by the lawyer to Mother Teresa, 5 wishes. And so the 5 wishes is a little bit more than a very typical legal attorney office form because it is a multiple choice. It's very easy to kind of look at it, and it's a great starter to think about advanced care directives. It's a good starter to talk about with family. And that's the one thing I must stress. I had one individual that came by, I'm also a parish nurse in the area, and she came by my office and she said, "I can't do this. I just put it down, I can't do it." And I said, "Well, think about it, think about it." And she had at the time two sons that were doctors. So they could help her probably decide, you know, and maybe talk about things maybe in more length that she wanted, but and all of a sudden she came back 4 weeks later and she just started crying and she said, "I did it. I did it. And now I feel great because I can write this down before something happens." The time is really of the essence, and I'm going to tell you a little quick story because I always talk about my days in the hospital. And so I was floated down to a different floor, and it was oncology. And this person had every tube you can imagine hooked up to her. And I get a call, and it was her daughter. And her daughter said, "Oh my goodness." She says, "I just found my mom's wishes. She doesn't want any of this. She didn't want any of it." She said, "What do I do now?" So if you hear that and someone is in the hospital and they didn't get a copy on their chart, there are what they call care teams. You can ask for a social worker, a nurse, a doctor, care team to be put together to talk about that and make sure that someone gets in the advanced directives. In a state of Arizona, you can actually register your advanced care directives with the state. And then in return, you get this little wallet-sized card with a PIN number. So then they can enter in the PIN code at the hospital and bring it up online. So it's kind of a state of Arizona registry, which is kind of nice to do. I was doing some research when I was trying to get I thought, well, geez, what am I going to time on in finances? And I was looking about on a website, and the website said, I don't want to scare you, but it said we are the highest rate for caregivers having issues before the person has an issue. That's kind of surprising. So getting everything in order time is of the essence, is what I'm trying to get through, no matter what's happening. And as you can think about things, jot them down. And the other thing is one person said, "Well, I just locked this up in my safe deposit box." And I said, "Well, how would you know what's on there? Does your family know?" No, it's just good and safe in there. And it's like, it is safe, but no one's going to know what's on there. The best thing to do, and I think that there's another piece to this, is talking about this issue, is talking about who am I going to have for my financial advisor or my financial power of attorney or my healthcare power of attorney. Who am I going to have? Who will make sure my wishes are done? Again, we kind of mentioned that I was doing this with family right now, and it is. Every day is different. Every day is different. And we kind of decided not to extend some of the treatments, and I really talked to my family, and I said, now when you're thinking about this, make sure it's not you and you're thinking about that person. What would that person want? What would that person want? And that's the same thing as the power of attorney. I'm going to make sure that person's wishes are carried out to the fullest. So that's something, this is a really easy thing to read. It might not be that you want to do this, you want to do something with a lawyer, but it's a good starting point, and it's a good starting document to talk about things. And the whole thing is to make sure that all of the family, wherever they are, it knows what's happening. So if say that someone is hospitalized and something's happening financial, can that financial power of attorney get a hold of you to make sure things are going, to the bills are paid, so this is going on. Same with the healthcare. Can they get a hold of you to continue on what you need to do? Because sometimes caregivers are having issues at the same time the person is having issues that you're caring for. And that can be kind of devastating all at once. So the more you talk about it with your family, the more it is really good. I must say that we have been open, and I've done that with my family that's down here, to make sure that both the sons know what's going on. One's in Minnesota, one's here. In case of an emergency, they kind of know. And it's really good to just keep talking about it. It scares people. That is not hopefully something that scares people. It's more of, I want to put my wishes down before I can't. Because things can kind of happen. And we know things can happen accidentally too, with driving, walking, falling, slipping, what have you. So that's kind of another one about finances. We look at Valley Assistance Services, we look at a lot of benefits, and we look at what we can help with. A lot of people come in that are limited income. I think I mentioned last time, but I'll mention it again. We do have, we are affiliated with the Diaper Bank of Southern Arizona, which is the first diaper bank in the nation, right in Tucson. And so we give out those supplies, and we do a lot of senior supplies. Yes, we go down to infant and youth, but we do a lot of senior supplies as well. So we do about $9,000 worth of products a month that we can deliver out. And that hopefully will help, because that's another part of finances, is what is the amount of supplies needed. You know, one good thing, and one person asked me, they said, you know, I'm kind of fallen in a donut hole. I've heard of that a lot, this donut hole. And they said, well, what can I do? I says, everything you spend, keep track of, everything. Journal it, keep the receipts, and keep track of it, because you don't know what you might qualify for later on. Some of the All-Tex programs here, it might come to that. And you can show that you spent down. You're spending $5,000 a month in assisted living or adult care home. Keep track of all the receipts for that. I know it's a lot of stuff to keep track of, but it does help in the long run. You know, a part of financial I might have to talk about is identity theft. That's another issue going on down here, where we have to be very careful of information giving out. And I know the scam squad would be saying the same thing. Never give out your social security number, and if they're asking for that on the phone, it's just wrong. If the IRS calls, it's wrong. You know, there's a lot of people that are calling on the phone, and you know, just to make sure that nothing is giving out that's a personal ID, that way that you don't know who it is receiving it on the other end. I mean, there's a lot of that going on. So, again, the other thing too is checks. There's a lot of people who are living independent in our community. They are using checks, and they might be living alone. And somebody comes by and they write the check, or they put it in the mailbox out front. We know things are happening more and more in communities where people are taking mail. They're you know, looking at checks or trying to cash different checks. We just have to be careful for those who have memory issues, if they're still living alone and doing that. A lot of those who I see actually might have another person on their checking account. And regulating that. It's a good thing for someone in the family maybe to regulate that. Again, like a financial power of attorney, regulating what's happening. Is someone cashing, again, scamming, writing out checks, extra money leaving, how is that leaving and where is it going, just to keep track. A lot of the articles and the magazines and literature that are out now for Alzheimer's is someone should be kind of overseeing that if they're not. Or at least checking monthly and kind of recording that and looking that over. A lot of it is being used maybe without that person's permission, or they're writing out to different things that they shouldn't have. That's a couple of things that has come up. So the other one thing I have taught on in the past, and this is for anybody, especially when things get tough. And I know when things change, caregivers are stressed, and it might be that sometimes health is the top priority, but making a list of passwords, making a list of things. Some people call it a kind of an account of accounts is what they call it. And so making sure there's somewhere that maybe that somebody would know in your family, this is where the account is located, this is what's in the safe deposit box, this is in our safe here, those types of things, because if you're involved with health and issues that may arise, things kind of, you might not be able to communicate that when it's needed. So being preventive on that is same as financial, but being preventive and making lists now of, okay, this is what is located, this is where we have the credit card, that type of thing for a financial power of attorney is very helpful. Maybe I'll give you a handout to give in future meetings. I did a whole PowerPoint of that with a paralegal. My gosh, we had 2 full classes, and it brought up issues of, oh wow, I didn't know I should write that down. Or, well, why would they need my account? Well, if something happened to you and you're the caregiver, then who would know? That is the issue. It's all about prevention, communication, making sure your family knows, or the designated power of attorney knows where things are kept, and where it is kept where, and some of the passwords maybe to even get on your computer. I had one lady said, well, I have my medication list, I have everything on my computer, and I said, that's good, but who can get on your computer if you're not here? Something like that, just thinking about that stuff is how many people can have access, but make sure that you have someone who is responsible, that will carry that out and be confidential. That is another important issue, especially with finances, passwords, checking account, those types of things. So, my gosh, I could keep going and going and going, but I want to leave some time for questions. So, does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Okay, so what if you live out here alone and your power of attorney is in another state? I don't feel comfortable with anybody else out here doing my stuff, so what do you do in that case?
A lot of people do have it out of state because they're traveling. There's another good question. Traveling and out of state power of attorneys. You need to feel comfortable with your power of attorney. We just got to be frank. Sometimes I don't want to put opinions, but no matter where they live, you need to feel comfortable with that. At Valley Assistance, we work with a lot of power of attorneys that are in New York, New England, and we're calling them back and forth. And there's often times that they'll just fly out, or they'll be talking to us directly in regards to someone who gave us permission to talk to them, and they feel comfortable with that person. That's the main thing, is comfortable, confidentiality, and knowing what your wishes are, and they'll carry them out. Traveling with a lot of people, I just had a barbershop quartet last weekend. They said they're the transplants, and I'm thinking transplants, but we kind of all are sometimes in a way. We come down to Arizona. There are some that are from Arizona, but traveling back and forth. Some people still live in another state. So if you're here full-time and you moved here full-time, make sure that you want to talk to a legal representative about making sure that advance directive is okay for Arizona, or if there's something that you need to add to it. So that was another question that someone had too. So,
what about owning properties? To me, the way you're saying things, it's a disadvantage to own property by yourself sometimes.
Not necessarily. So
take your home or your other properties you own, can they come and hook onto that and take that?
So I'm going to refer to a financial advisor because there's ways to do that.
Yes.
And it does take time. I had to do that with family. It took 5 years.
Yes.
So it does take time, and the financial advisor will indicate how to do that. Yep. Good point, good point. You can always have that, home and car and all that, even if you're on a different program. It's just they have to do it in a certain way, or they'll advise you to do this, that, or the other thing.
Thank you.
Do you have any financial financial advisors you're going to recommend?
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can recommend anybody, but there are several groups in the area. You know, we have the Raymond James and the Edward Jones and the national ones down here too. And we have great elder law attorneys in our area. Fine, you know, very, very well done ones that have helped and have given presentations on this before. So I don't want to really recommend one over the other. So
Could you give a few names of the elder law attorneys?
one that I know is still, I believe he is still operating, is Tim Olcott. He is one of the elder law attorneys. He is the one that actually presents a lot on advanced care directives. So that is one. There's others. I don't want to recommend just one, but there are others. But I know he has done presentations on that. So, yeah.
Talking particularly about public utilities, are the paying electronically more or less safe than paying by check? I've been reluctant to listen to these things.
Please repeat the question.
Oh,
So the question was, paying electronically, is it safe? Is it a little bit more safe? You know, some people are going to say yes and no. The problem is, what I see is you know, when now we're writing checks are tending to be, depending on the area, people will take checks. You know, and they might open up the mailbox, and if it's not locked, take stuff out that look like a check. We've had that happen in our area. And I don't want to sound kind of panicky about it, but there has been, and that's happening everywhere in the U.S. now. It's just a different world. The automatic withdrawals are good if somebody is overseeing them. So if there's a extra charge or something on there, somebody should be visually looking at those. A lot of people do know the direct payment to that company directly, kind of an electronic check, if you want to say, direct from the bank to the person. But we always tell people when we see them, make sure you look at your statements, make sure you're getting a confirmation, make sure you're getting a receipt. And that's why, I mean, I do that at home myself. I make sure, okay, did I pay for this? Yep, that's the amount, yes. So you want to make sure of that, so.
Chris, I think we have the handout that you talked about here. I think we ran, Chris
Okay.
McGod, is that what we ran off?
No,
Or something
no,
else?
we ran off this one.
Oh, okay.
That one has the forms in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that is available. We did have, we kind of ran out, I think, of what you brought, but anyway, there are some available, and you're welcome to pick those up at the end. So, anyway.
One thing I might add along with this, and I don't know if anyone's talked about it, is what's called the DNR. Do not resuscitate. That is a conversation between you and a doctor and family. So that is where they won't take any extreme measures to do any CPR. And sometimes that is, people post that. There is a orange sheet from the fire department. Green Valley Fire Department has an orange sheet that you put your, that you want to be on there. And usually it's if it's a terminal or somewhere that you might not be doing well, that you might not come out of it. They might do a DNR in advance kind of thing. This is a pre-hospital DNR. It can be posted. If anybody's heard of the envelope of life, that's another thing from the fire district that they put on, and I've been in several of their codes or their emergency calls, just happened to be there at the time, and they would pull that right off the refrigerator, or if it's in the refrigerator, it has a list of your emergency contacts, has a list of your history, your health history, your medication list, those types of things. And let me tell you, if there's an emergency going on, I would forget. The person next to me always forgot, oh my gosh, there's so much going on, you just can't remember, you're overwhelmed. That's the other deal. So putting that all down on a piece of paper, they have it, and they look, they open that envelope right up, and they just write it right down. So if you forgot, yes, I was on lisinopril or Lasix or whatever it is, they've got it all down and they can start writing it down to make sure that then the hospital has it. And the DNR is the orange sheet, which you can put in there so that they know as well.
Does the envelope of life come from the fire department?
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. They have a whole, and you know what, I ran out because I've been talking about it so much, but it's just kind of a little small little envelope, and then there's a little, they put it in a bag so they can identify it. They usually say put it on your side of your refrigerator or in your refrigerator, because they do look.
Yeah.
All of them, they'll just go right there and look, so, yep.
Just to clarify, that the fire department doesn't actually do the DNR though.
No, correct,
That, yeah.
correct. They do have the sheets though. So the sheets in the state of Arizona is orange, and that is what is required in our state. You yourself and the doctor have to sign the DNR. So that is a good conversation with a doctor if you would like that going on, or somebody that you know wanted to be DNR. There's a lot of people who do later in life. We had a lot of them when I was in the hospital that were do not resuscitate. If they go into the hospital, they would have to have another doctor's order, because the orange sheet is pre-hospital that we have here.
Oh.
Great, good, okay, wow. Well, thank you very much for letting me speak, so, awesome.
I think you get a sense about, this is a busy woman with lots and lots of resources, and we'd just like to put you on speed dial if we may, Chris. And if I understand, you're from Minnesota. I hope your relatives back there are going to be safe in this
I hope so.
incredible storm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm just kind of thinking into what you just said. The orange sheet is pre-hospital. And now I am not in good shape, and I'm at the hospital, and I know I'm not able to fill out a form like that. How does that happen? What do you do?
So in the hospital, you want to come back and
I just
answer that?
want to
before?
clarify this, that I'm fully
Yeah,
honest.
right, okay.
Somebody else asked me about that while traveling. I said, bring it with you. So if they're grabbing your envelope of life and you have it in your envelope of life, tell them to bring it with you and stick it right on a stretcher right with you and take it there. So then at least they would know a little bit that you've had that, you have talked to your doctor, because once you get into the hospital, you're probably going to have a hospitalist. That is, just a doctor that is kind of floating around and seeing patients in the hospital. A lot of the primary doctors do not rotate now in the hospital where they used to many years ago. It's a hospitalist that is seeing you. So bringing that information with. The other thing is to make sure you have advanced care directives that might say it in there as well, and someone has a copy they can bring in.
Anything else before we let her go? One more, Chris?
Could the healthcare POA address that issue if she were in the hospital?
That is correct.
Said
So
that-
there we go. So if they know where things are kept, that is very true. They can do that. So if you are not able to speak and they know where the things are, they have a record of that, they can actually absolutely talk with the doctor about that. That is very correct. Yep. All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, friends, I want to just share some things as we transition. As you know, this is the end of our forum series, and from now on we morph into what we're calling the Caring Through Dementia Network. And so our next meeting will be on March the 9th, and Regina Ford is going to come and talk with us about Memory Cafe, as well as her own experience as a caregiver. She's at Posada Life, as you know. She's been co-leading our forum series. She's also a theater director, and so she's been directing the CPAC theater productions here lately, integrating that into this work, so she's not able to be here today, and I'm assuming it's partly that situation. So that will be in 2 weeks, March the 9th, back here at 3 o'clock. And then we will meet every 2 weeks as a network. And the reason for that in part is because we want to make it available to the community for people that come into Green Valley and aren't sure what to do or where to go or how to find any resources. We want to be that resource for them. So we can direct people out in different ways and make sure that they know the resources that they have. I want to say just a brief word of care and concern for those of you who are caregivers. This last week on Saturday, one of our members was on silver alert, and his wife was in the hospital, and as he went away from the hospital, they gave him directions as to how to get home. Coming back to Green Valley from Tucson, he ended up in Wilcox the next day. So that's a caution for us to remind ourselves of, the vulnerability that we have, and to be thankful that he was found safe, and the Sheriff's Department was responding to that. But the silver alert came out on Sunday night, and our pastor happened to see it, and of course right away we're thinking about the family and stuff. The other one that I will mention to you is not too long ago, one of the caregivers of a person with dementia became quite ill. She ended up in the hospital. She recovered. She had arrhythmia, severe, and spent about 4 days in the hospital, partly I think from the stress of caring for her loved one. A few days later she attempted suicide. So just to say that this is heavy stuff, and I think we're probably aware of that it's really important for caregivers to take care of themselves. And if you don't know about respite programs, if your loved one is still in the home, make sure you take advantage of the resource of having someone come in and sit with your loved one or be with them. And also take advantage of other ways that you can build in breaks for yourself so that you get a sense of your own personhood and your own life and whatever other things that you need to be about. So if you remember back to Linda Laird, who spoke to us, I think in the third session, about her journey with her husband for those 7 years, she sometimes would go off for a week and she would not ever come back during that week, even though her husband sometimes was, and the caregiver would call her and say, we're having this crisis, and she said, deal with it, because I'm someplace else. She would be across the country. She said, I always told my husband I was going to quilt shows. She said I had quilt shows all over the world that year. But she needed it. She knew enough to know that she needed to take a full 5 days away from her husband. As difficult as it is, I think sometimes as a caregiver, the most challenging thing you have is to let go of that person and to take care of yourself. I speak out of the connection with my own mother in that regard. She struggled so much to try to not be present 99% of the time with her husband, my father. So the results you're all waiting for today are, of course, the results from the survey that you took, right? Are you with bated breath here on this? So we had a total of 7 different topics that we talked about in the survey, and I think it was about 27 or 28 of you that returned the survey, for which we're very grateful. It gives us a chance to get your feedback, your ideas about what we're communicating and wanting to get across. Very strong response to the notion of advanced care planning. And there are 3 different subtitles on that. One is managing the stages of dementia. Caring for a loved one in stage 1 of dementia has one level of responsibility and challenge. When you go into stage 2 dementia, there's other dynamics. And then stage 3. So managing those stages, understanding those stages, and trying to make some sense out about that. There's also in that same category
conversations about inpatient care, about palliative care, and about hospice care. So those are topics that we would be exploring with that particular theme. One that I also want to mention to you is communicating and connecting. In the book, Dementia Together, the author, Patty Bielek-Smith, talks about the difference in communicating and connecting. Communicating tends to be the transfer of knowledge or information from one person to another. Connecting, however, is about making a connection. Somebody that you know, relating to. And she says, how do you communicate? How do you connect without words? Right? That's a challenge, isn't it? For some of us, how do we communicate? We're so used to words. I'm so used to words and communication. She says 3 ideas. One is by your presence, being fully present to that person. Avoiding all other distractions. People pick it up when you're on your cell phone in your head, or when you're planning, the next meal or some other thing in your head, instead of being fully present. The second thing she said is music, sharing music with each other. And the third thing she said is touch. Touch. When I was in seminary, I was going through a pastoral care program, and one of the ways that we were evaluated as we entered into a role play situation with a person who was in the hospital was how we related, how we communicated through our eye contact, through our presence being with somebody, but also did we touch that person. And it may be a very gentle thing. You have to pick up your clues on all of that, but that is very important, that whole notion of touch and communication. So when Regina comes next week, in 2 weeks, on March the 9th, she'll be talking about Memory Cafe, and that's an experiment in communication and connecting between people who have dementia and people who do not have dementia, about how they can relate and find and build relationships between the two of them in this community, that what they call the Memory Cafe. So I invite you to come back at that time and be with us. We also had quite a few responses, and I think today we're getting some responses too, to practical matters, learning about what the fire department does and what the Sheriff's Auxiliary does, learning about tracking devices, call buttons, and cameras. So those are some other things that came out as number 1. How many of you have or know of respite services, or call on respite services? How many of you have a support group if you're a caregiver? A number of you do. How many of you have a Zoom support group? A couple of you have a Zoom support group. Isn't that interesting how that now we have options that are so much more valuable to us and opportunities. What do you want to know? What more do you want to learn? And how would you like to move from here? So what I'd like for you to do now is to move for the last 15 minutes into small groups. And if you could, breakout groups, just groups of 3 or 4, talk about what you've learned from our forum series and anything that you want to learn more about. So we'll move into that for this coming 15 minutes, and then you're free to go. Be sure to let people know about, we're not meeting next week, but in 2 weeks. The good news about today is we don't have to set up for the whole cafe tomorrow. And we scheduled those networking meetings so they're every time they're on the 2nd and 4th, and we don't have to ever set up for Hope lunch again. So, okay, so move into groups of 3 and 4 around you. Yes, Jerry?
March 9th, is it 3 o'clock here?
Yeah, 3 o'clock here. March the 9th, 3 o'clock here, back here in this spot. So what did you learn about dementia? What more would you like for us to focus on?
I learned I don't want to.